Welcome to Transportation Development. I'm Cheryl Harleston. Today we're going to be talking about the Transportation Development Program and the sales tax. Most of you are familiar with the fact that we did ask the public to provide a sales tax so that we could build and improve our road systems in Charleston County, and that's working very well. But we want to go back a little bit further today and talk about planning. How do we get to the place where a road or a bridge or a sidewalk or an intersection, how do we get to the place where all of that is being built? And we're going to talk with a gentleman today who knows a little bit about that. He comes from an organization called the Berkeley Charleston Dorchester County Government, Council of Governments, and it is there where the planning goes on to assist transportation development and other agencies in the Tri-County area to come up with the planning and to stay on top of things so that we can respond to the growth and the need to provide good roads and bridges and all of the same. I'd like you to meet my guest today. He is Dan Frazier, and he is with the Berkeley County, Dorchester County, Charleston County Transportation of Governments. And it's nice having you here. That BCD, Council of Governments, I'll tell you, all of these acronyms really drive you crazy sometimes. Them, that's for sure. But I did say to the public earlier, and other programs that we've done here, we've talked about the projects that we see, the brick, the mortar, the paving, and all of those kinds of things, the intersections that are built, Bees Ferry Road, and all of those kinds of projects that come under transportation development. But we haven't talked about how we get to that point. Who is responsible for seeing to it that we are, in fact, making plans to do the actual work so that we don't miss anything, so that the public gets what it needs and what it expects? So I would assume that someone like you in planning for the Council of Governments would be able to help us understand how one gets to building these roads, bridges, etc. What do you do exactly with the Council of Governments?
Well, I am the Senior Transportation Planner with the Council of Governments. Our office, it's Berkeley, Charleston, Dorchester Council of Governments, and there's several different functions under our umbrella office. We're a regional entity. We oversee 3 counties. There's an urban area and a rural area of each of the counties, and they're defined, actually defined by the Census Bureau, but in the urban area, it is the Metropolitan Planning Organization, CHATS MPO, that maintains the federal tax dollars that get allocated to the area for transportation planning.
And let me understand something, and I'm coming at you as a novice,
okay,
and because I really am. It's a lot to understand,
right,
and there's a lot going on, and it's not just a road is being paved. I mean, there's been a lot of activity that has happened before all of that. But where do these dollars come from, and how do these various government entities interface? And are we just receiving, meaning those who build the roads and intersections and all those kinds of things, are we just getting dollars from the county residents, or are dollars coming from other places?
Right. Oh, definitely coming from other places. Lots of federal dollars. Whenever you buy a gallon of gas, there's a federal gas tax. That money goes to DC, but it gets reallocated, and one of the places that it gets reallocated to the states and then suballocated to urban areas and rural areas. So we get a suballocation of money, roughly $19 million a year goes to the CHATS MPO, and then roughly a little over $2 million a year goes to the rural area in the Berkeley, Charleston, Dorchester area. So there's funding above and beyond the what they call the local option sales tax.
So the Charleston County Transportation Development utilizes transportation sales tax dollars.
Yes.
And that came in a referendum back early 2000.
Correct.
And those dollars are being used now to build and to make road improvements, street improvements, multi-use paths, and all of those kinds of things. Are you privileged to utilize those dollars as well? Would members of the Council of Governments make any decisions as it regards transportation sales tax, or just federal dollars and maybe county dollars and city dollars?
It is just federal dollars. Now the sales tax is born out of the counties, and they're great programs. We have them in all 3 counties. They've been highly successful, and they definitely have done wonders for the transportation infrastructure in the region. We have projects that we list that have federal tax dollars, so we list those projects in our transportation improvement program. Some of those also have funding coming from sales tax options.
Okay.
But for the most part, when you talk about sales tax option money, transportation funding from a sales tax, that's driven wholly by the counties, including administering the programs and project selection.
If we're just doing a simple road repaving, or if we're just putting in an intersection, or if we're putting into a multi-use path for bicycles and for walkers and all of those folks that enjoy that kind of exercise, are those dollars just sales tax dollars, county sales tax dollars, or are those federal dollars? Or are those tri-county dollars, or are they all separate?
Well, that's an excellent question, and they can come from multiple sources. There's definitely federal dollars. There's something called a Transportation Alternatives Program. It's federal dollars that would come locally. We get allocated a certain amount of money. Us, as the CHATS MPO, we administer a process, a competitive process to select projects. Any jurisdiction can apply for extending a trail or adding a sidewalk or anything other than road construction. They can use federal dollars to have basically what's called a bicycle or pedestrian project done. But then also your sales tax option pays for lots of projects as well.
And would
So
pay for the
sources.
construction, because that can
Yes.
happen purely, if necessary, under the sales tax program.
It can, and in fact, when it does, it doesn't bring in the federal component. If you're not spending federal dollars, you don't have to follow federal guidelines. And in often cases, it's an easier path if it's done locally using only local or state dollars instead of federal dollars for some projects.
Let's get into the planning for just a minute, and I'm interested in what you do exactly. There are a lot of roads in our community, sidewalk, all of these things that come under what we're talking about today.
Right.
Lots, and then on top of all of this, we have a lot of folks who are moving into the area, coming from all over the country and all over the world, and moving into the Charleston, Berkeley, Dorchester County area. And that means roads. That means that they are traveling back and forth to work, etc. You know all of the
Yes.
things that we do. If that's the case, and the population is growing as it is, if there are more roads that are being needed and improved, which is the big issue, because I've heard about those from upstate, large businesses, not only upstate but here in this community, who say, we've got to have better roads. These potholes aren't going to make it. Right. If that's the case, has the planning been done long enough in advance to take care of these trends that are occurring today?
Well, we are the Metropolitan Planning Organization, as I said, and one of our primary documents is a long-range transportation plan.
Yes.
And it's not created in-house by the Council of Governments. It's actually a very public process. It's also reaching out to the jurisdictions, where we are getting ready to update the long-range transportation plan out to the year 2040. And what that constitutes is an open public process, going to each of the jurisdictions to understand what their transportation needs are, coming up with a number of projects that would be what we call the candidate list of projects, and then scoring those according to specific criteria. Also wrapped up in that is modeling the region. We have something called a transportation demand model. And and it does its best to control the growth projections and understand growth and where roads need capacity, maybe additional lanes, where there needs to be new roads, where there just needs to be maintenance of roads, where potholes come in.
That's exactly where I'm going. The concern that I'm having right now is that the need may be out of balance with the planning. And the planning is needed for the construction and the improvement.
Yes.
Are all of these things in sync?
Well, it's common knowledge that we don't have enough money to maintain our roads in the manner we would like to. That's not just South Carolina, but South Carolina definitely has issue with it. And that's when you look at all funding altogether. The local sales tax option is a wonderful tool that isn't used in a lot of states, and it's used very well here and very well in our 3 counties. But still, we have lots of roads to maintain. We are the Berkeley, Charleston, Dorchester area is a growing population. We have major headquarters coming here. The economy's booming. It means more people, more cars, hopefully more transit options. But all in all, it's always playing catch up. There's never enough funds to keep our roads in pristine condition.
How far in advance is the planning?
We go out 25 years with the Long Range Transportation Plan. What it is basically is coming up with, it's called a fiscally constrained plan, meaning that we have to weigh our anticipated revenue against the project costs. So if we anticipate $19 million a year in federal tax dollars coming to our region, that's 19 times 25 years. And then we compare that against, well, how many projects can be built using that amount of money? And that's the raw bones of the Long Range Transportation Plan, is you come up with a list of projects that should be able to be built based upon the amount of money you're bringing in. But that's only looking at federal dollars, and we have multiple other sources of transportation funding.
And all of these funding sources, they're in sync. Are they working together?
They are. Oftentimes they are. We have multiple projects that'll have multiple sources of funding. Some are strictly using federal dollars, and some will use federal and local dollars. Some use the state infrastructure bank as well. But it's always in motion. It's a living document, and it rolls into another document called the Transportation Improvement Program, which is a shorter version of the Long Range Plan. It goes out over 6 years, and it identifies where money goes specific to projects. And at that point, the money that's going to them is called programmed money, meaning that dollar amount is identified specific to that project. And that's also, those 2 documents are the primary documents that we maintain at the BCD-COG in relation to transportation planning.
I don't know if this question makes sense. If it doesn't, just tell me. It doesn't bother me at all. But the question I have in my mind right now is, are we spending more money for planning than we are for actual construction?
Oh, more money? Definitely not. I would say that we're spending, planning is essential because in the long run, it will save construction dollars if planning is done correctly. And a lot of times you have to look at the feasibility of projects. You have to look at the environmental concerns of projects. And when you're looking at feasibility and the environmental aspects of projects, these are things that you want to learn on the front end. Where a brand new route is going to go, it may come across wetlands if you align it in a certain manner, and that could cost more money than if you reroute it around the wetlands. And all of that's still in the planning phase or the design phase before you start building a road. But it saves you money in the long run.
And on top of all of that, you've got agencies that are watching you.
Yes. Permitting.
That's right, permitting. That are watching you saying, okay, not that, we can't do it, the environment is going to be in trouble, we must not go through here, and then you end up with mitigation kinds of issues. And so you really have to be very particular about the plans that are made, I would imagine.
Yes.
And the work that's done.
That's right. And a lot of that falls in the world of the design engineers that are actually preparing the construction documents. Yeah, but you're submitting environmental permits, you're submitting to local agencies, you're submitting to to the health environmental committees, to DHEC,
Right.
so you have multiple permitting that has to be done, especially with the bigger projects. And a lot of times it is difficult to get past that hurdle.
When we come back from the break, I'd like to talk with you a little bit about what happens when the plan is out of date. Imagine you have to update these plans periodically because things are changing quickly.
Right.
People are changing, road paths are changing, and then there are other opportunities that come up as well. And I'm sure that your agency is following the opportunities, whether they be through the federal government or the state government or whomever.
Right.
Looking at that, and then want to talk a little bit about maintenance. I don't know if that's anything that you would be involved in, but certainly it's a question on some of our minds as to how we're going to maintain the road systems that we build now and in the future. What happens when a plan goes out, it's out of date? I wonder if that happens. I'm sure it doesn't. We'll be back in just a moment. Don't go away.